When a man starts ignoring you, it's tempting to take it personally, to think it's about something you did, or worse, it's been something you lacked. But often, what's happening beneath the silence is far more complex. Let's peel back the curtain and talk about what he's really hiding when he pulls away. When a man begins to ignore you, your instinct might be to question yourself, wondering if you said something wrong or weren't enough in some way. But often, his silence has more to do with his internal battles than anything you did. Many men struggle to handle deep emotions, especially when those feelings catch them off guard. Instead of opening up or leaning in, they retreat. Silence becomes their coping mechanism because facing vulnerability can feel overwhelming or even threatening. It's not always about rejection. Sometimes it's about emotional overload that he doesn't know how to process. In other cases, his distance may reflect fear. Not necessarily fear of you, but fear of what the relationship represents. The idea of committing, of being truly seen, or of stepping into something serious can trigger all sorts of insecurities. Some men ignore rather than engage, thinking that space will help them avoid the pressure. But often, they're simply hiding from a truth they don't want to face. Apology has been. That truth could be their lack of clarity, their doubts, or even guilt about something they're not ready to confess. Instead of communicating openly, they choose avoidance. There are also men who use silence as a test. They pull back to see how you'll respond. Will you chase after them, beg for attention, or walk away? This is rooted in their need for validation. They want to feel desired without doing the hard of emotional intimacy. Apology has been. Then there are those who simply lack the maturity to express themselves. Emotional immaturity makes it easier to ghost or ignore them to sit in discomfort and communicate with kindness and honesty. Silence, in these cases, is a sign of emotional limitation, not mystery. And finally, once the apology, some men ignore you because they've already made their decision. They're no longer invested, but don't have the courage to say it out loud. They choose the silent exit, hoping you'll take the hint. While this can hurt deeply, it also reveals something important: their lack of emotional availability, communication skills, or respect for you. As painful as the silence can be, it's often a gift in disguise. It shows you who he is and saves you from building something real with someone who isn't capable of being real with you. When a man pulls away or ignores you, it can be confusing, especially when everything seems to be going well. What many people don't realize is that sometimes, the stronger his feelings, the more scared he becomes. It's not necessarily that he doesn't like you. In fact, he might like you more than he's ready to admit. That deep emotional connection can stir something unexpected in him. Fear has been. The idea of falling for someone deeply can challenge his sense of control and independence, making him feel as if he's losing a part of himself. Instead of leaning in, he pulls back. Not because the connection isn't real, but because it feels too intense. There's also a fear of not being enough. A man might look at you and see someone he genuinely wants, yet doubt whether he can meet your needs, match your energy, or offer the kind of stability you deserve. This inner conflict can lead him to believe that staying silent or keeping distance is a safer choice than risking vulnerability. It's easier for him to hide behind silence than admit he feels uncertain about his own ability to show up in the way you need him to. He may worry that if he opens himself up, he might eventually disappoint you. Or worse, get hurt himself. Another layer to this fear comes from being truly seen. For many men, emotional intimacy is uncharted territory. They might be comfortable in surface, level interactions, but when someone starts to see beyond the surface and connect with who they really are, it can be unnerving. Suddenly, they feel exposed, like their flaws, insecurities, and weaknesses are under a microscope. Ignoring you becomes a form of self-protection. By pulling away, they avoid the discomfort of being known too deeply, even if it costs them a meaningful relationship. In moments like this, it's important to remember that his silence is not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of where he is emotionally. A man who is ready for a deep connection won't run from it. He'll step toward it with openness, even if he's afraid. The fear itself isn't the problem. How he chooses to deal with it is. If he hides behind distance and avoids honest conversations, it tells you more about his readiness than about your value. You deserve someone who isn't afraid to be seen and who doesn't let fear keep him from choosing you. When a man ignores you, it can feel cold and calculated, but often it stems something much less intentional. His own confusion. He might not fully understand what he wants from the relationship or from his own life at that moment. That uncertainty can paralyze him, leaving him stuck between showing up and walking away. Instead of confronting his confusion head-on, he chooses the easier route, silence. It's not that he's trying to hurt you. It's that he's avoiding the discomfort of making a decision. And in doing so, he leaves you hanging, hoping things will somehow work themselves out without him needing to be clear. This lack of clarity doesn't always mean he doesn't care. In fact, his confusion might be coming from a place of caring too much, but not knowing how to handle it. He could be questioning whether he's ready for something serious, whether he's capable of being a good partner, or whether he's even in the right place emotionally to continue. Instead of communicating these doubts, he keeps them inside and distances himself from you. It feels like rejection, but it's actually a reflection of his inner conflict and fear of making the wrong move. Either by staying when he's not ready or leaving and regretting it. Unfortunately, indecision can look a lot like indifference. From your side, it may seem like he doesn't care or isn't invested when, in reality, he's battling with himself. The silence becomes his way of avoiding confrontation, even though it creates confusion and pain for you. This lack of communication doesn't just create emotional distance. It chips away at the trust and connection that might have been building. And over time, it can leave you questioning your own worth and wondering what you did wrong, even though his silence has nothing to do with your value. The truth is, someone who doesn't know what he wants isn't in a position to build something healthy and lasting. Relationships require clarity, presence, and emotional honesty. If he's too uncertain to offer those things, then his silence is a message in itself. It may not be the answer you wanted, but it's still an answer. You deserve someone who is sure about choosing you, has been, not someone who hides silence while trying to sort himself out. Sometimes when a man ignores you, he's not really trying to end things. He's testing the waters to see how you'll respond. He might pull back emotionally or physically just to observe your reaction. Will you chase after him? Will you get upset? Or will you try harder to please him? This kind of behavior isn't always planned or intentional. Often, it's driven by a deep-rooted insecurity. He wants to feel wanted, desired, and important, but instead of asking for reassurance in a healthy way, he creates distance to provoke it from you once the apology has been. This test isn't necessarily about manipulation, though it can easily feel that way. It's more about seeking control in a situation where he feels unsure. If he sees you making more effort after he pulls away, it reassures him that you care. It gives him the emotional safety he's craving, but at your expense. Because instead of building a connection based on honesty and openness, he's relying on passive strategies to validate himself. It puts you in the uncomfortable position of having to prove your worth just to maintain his attention. The problem with this dynamic is that it's one-sided. You end up doing all the work while he sits back, observing and deciding how he feels on how hard you try. This can create an unhealthy pattern where your value becomes tied to how well you respond to his silence. It's emotionally exhausting. And over time, it erodes your confidence and sense of balance in the relationship. No one should feel like they're constantly being measured or tested to earn love or attention. A healthy relationship is built on mutual effort, mutual vulnerability, and mutual respect. If someone is pulling away just to see if you'll chase them, they're not showing emotional maturity. They're revealing their fear of being truly open. Instead of responding to the silence with more effort, step back and ask yourself if this is the kind of connection you really want. You deserve someone who shows up consistently, not someone who disappears to test your loyalty. When a man starts ignoring you, there's often more going on beneath the surface than he's willing to admit. One of the most common reasons is guilt. He may have said something, done something, or even considered doing something that goes against the connection you both shared. Rather than confronting it, he chooses to withdraw. Silence becomes his way of avoiding a conversation that might expose the truth or force him to take responsibility for his actions. It's a way of hiding from the weight of what he knows he should address, but doesn't have the courage to. This kind of guilt can stem from many situations. Maybe he crossed a boundary he knew would hurt you. Maybe he's been entertaining someone else's attention or dealing with feelings that contradict what he's expressed to you. Instead of being honest, he avoids contact, thinking that distance will soften the impact or allow him to escape consequences. In his mind, staying silent feels safer than explaining himself or risking the emotional fallout of being confronted. He hopes that time and space will let the issue fade, but in reality, the silence only creates more confusion and hurt. Ignoring you doesn't erase the guilt. It just buries it. And often, the longer he stays silent, the heavier that guilt becomes. He might think he's protecting you by not saying anything, but what he's really doing is protecting himself from discomfort. This self-preserving behavior shows a lack of emotional maturity and a fear of being held accountable. It's easier for him to disappear than it is to sit in honest, uncomfortable conversation and face your reaction. And while his silence might seem cold or cruel, it's actually rooted in his own inability to deal with what he's done. At the end of the day, someone who truly respects you doesn't hide when things get hard. They don't leave you in the dark while they wrestle with guilt alone. Real connection requires truth, even when it's messy. Once the apology has been, if he can't bring himself to talk about what's bothering him or what mistake he's made, then he's showing you that he isn't ready for the kind of relationship that values openness and trust. Once the has been, you deserve someone who can look you in the eye and tell you the truth, not someone who hides behind silence, hoping it will all just go away. When a man ignores you, one possible reason that often goes unnoticed is emotional immaturity. Not all men have learned how to deal with deep emotions or uncomfortable conversations. They may know how to flirt, have fun, and enjoy surface-level interactions, but when things start to get serious or require vulnerability, they shut down. It's not because they don't feel anything. It's because they don't know how to handle what they're feeling. Communicating fears, doubts, or even affection can feel overwhelming, so instead, they resort to silence. This kind of avoidance isn't always malicious. Sometimes it's simply a reflection of how they were raised or what they've seen modeled around them. If they've never learned to express themselves openly or were taught to see vulnerability as weakness, then silence becomes their default response. Rather than being honest about what's going on inside, they withdraw, hoping the issue will disappear on its own. Unfortunately, this leaves you confused and hurt, wondering what went wrong has been, when in reality they're just emotionally undeveloped. The danger of dealing with someone emotionally immature is that the burden of communication often falls entirely on you. You're the one trying to open the conversation, trying to understand, trying to hold things together. Meanwhile, he avoids taking any emotional responsibility. It can start to feel like you're in a relationship with someone who disappears whenever things get real, and no matter how much effort you put in, nothing changes. This imbalance is draining, and it makes it near impossible to build something stable and fulfilling. True connection requires emotional presence from both sides. It's okay if someone struggles to express themselves, but there needs to be willingness to learn, grow, and show up. If he isn't ready to talk, to be honest, or to confront his discomfort, then he isn't ready for a real relationship. You shouldn't have to guess what he's feeling or chase him into communication. You deserve a partner who can meet you halfway, not someone who disappears the moment things get difficult. When a man ignores you, it's not always because he's hurt or confused. Sometimes it's because his ego has taken a hit. If something you said or did challenge his sense of control or pride, his first instinct might be to shut down communication. Instead of talking through his feelings or expressing what bothered him, he chooses silence as a way to protect his image. He wants to feel strong, in charge, and emotionally untouchable. By pulling away, he creates a false sense of power, as if ignoring you somehow puts him back in control. This kind of behavior often happens when someone sees relationships as a game of dominance, rather than a space for mutual respect. If you didn't react the way he expected, or you set a boundary he didn't like, he might withdraw to make a point. His silence becomes a way of punishing you, hoping you'll feel uneasy or guilty enough to come chasing after him. It's less about resolving the issue and more about shifting the balance of power back in his favor. He wants to feel needed, missed, and most importantly, above being hurt. The problem with letting ego lead is that it damages the very foundation of connection. It replaces empathy with pride and turns healthy communication into manipulation. When someone uses silence to prove a point or get revenge for a bruised ego, it's not just immature. It's harmful. It teaches both people in the relationship to prioritize power over understanding, and eventually, that erodes trust. You begin to question if every disagreement will lead to him shutting you out instead of leaning in to talk things through. A relationship built on ego will never give you the safety and emotional openness you deserve. You should never have to tiptoe around some pride or worry that standing up for yourself will lead to emotional punishment. Real connection happens when both people can be honest, even in uncomfortable moments, without fear of being pushed away. If he needs to protect his ego more than he values your connection, then he's not offering love. He's offering a power struggle disguised as affection. When a man starts ignoring you, the apology has been, there's a chance he's hiding something he knows would hurt you if it came to light. It could be that he's developed feelings for someone else, is reconnecting with an ex, or even leading a double life that he's carefully kept from you. Rather than facing the discomfort of telling you the truth, he chooses distance as a way to avoid the conversation altogether. He hopes that by ignoring you, the problem might disappear, or that you'll slowly back away your own without him having to explain himself. This behavior often stems from a lack of courage. Instead of being honest and upfront, he chooses the easier route silence. Has been. Telling the truth would mean admitting that he's not the person you believed him to be. And that can be uncomfortable for someone who wants to avoid accountability. The longer he keeps quiet, the more time he buys for himself, even if that silence is hurting you. He might justify it by thinking he's sparing your feelings, but in reality, he's just sparing himself the guilt of seeing your reaction. Ignoring you becomes his escape plan. It allows him to quietly exit or distance himself from the relationship without having to take responsibility for the emotional damage it causes. This kind of avoidance is deeply unfair because it leaves you confused, questioning your worth, and searching for answers that he already knows but won't say. You may start blaming yourself, wondering what went wrong, when the truth is being deliberately hidden from you. His silence is not kindness. It's a way of keeping the truth buried for his own comfort. You deserve honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. A real relationship is built on trust, and that trust requires truth, even when it's hard to say. If the apology's been he's hiding something that could change how you see him or what you want from the relationship, then he's already made a choice about what he values more, his comfort or your clarity. You should never have to chase someone just to be told the truth. If he can't be honest about what's really going on, then he's showing you he's not ready for the kind of love that requires integrity, openness, and respect. When a man loses interest but doesn't have the courage to admit it. His silence becomes his escape. Instead of having an honest conversation about how he feels, he begins to pull away quietly, has been, hoping that you'll eventually get the message without him having to say a word. It's a passive way of ending things without facing the discomfort of confrontation, has been. He avoids taking responsibility for the change in his feelings by slowly fading out of your life, leaving you confused and questioning what went wrong. This kind of behavior is often rooted in emotional avoidance. Saying, "I've lost interest," feels harsh to him, and rather than risk being seen as the bad guy, he chooses to disappear. He may convince himself that by saying nothing, he's sparing your feelings, but the truth is his silence is far more painful. Being ignored creates uncertainty and self-doubt, which can be more damaging than a difficult truth. You're left hanging in limbo, replaying conversations and overanalyzing moments, trying to make sense of his distance. Unfortunately, this silence can feel like emotional abandonment. You might hold on, waiting for a text or a call, hoping that something went wrong that has nothing to do with you. But deep down, a part of you knows something has shifted. The longer he stays silent, the more space he creates between you both. Not just physically, but emotionally, has been. What hurts the most is not just his absence, but the fact that he didn't respect you enough to be honest. That lack of closure can leave lasting doubts about your worth and the relationship itself. It's important to understand that someone who disappears rather than communicates was never ready for a mature relationship. Avoidance might spare him temporary discomfort, but it causes long-term hurt for you. You deserve clarity, even when the truth is hard. Someone who truly respects you won't leave you guessing. They'll show up with honesty, even when it's not easy. If he's lost interest and can't say it, apology has been. Then he's showing you he lacks the emotional maturity to be the partner you need. Let his silence be your sign to move forward with your head high and your self-worth intact. When a man chooses silence over communication, it reveals more about his emotional capacity than any words ever could, has been. The ability to engage in honest, vulnerable conversations is a vital part of any healthy relationship. If he avoids you when things get tough, it shows he may not have the tools or willingness to build something real and lasting. It's easy to get caught up in wondering what you did wrong. But sometimes the silence says everything you need to know. His behavior has been as a reflection of his limitations, not your worth. Many people stay emotionally attached to someone simply because they don't have closure. But the truth is, closure doesn't always come in the form of a clear conversation. Sometimes it comes through someone's inability to step up. If he can't face you, can't talk things through, and disappears when connection is needed most, then that is your answer. The silence may feel like rejection, but in reality, it's redirection. It's a moment that offers you clarity, even though it arrives wrapped in disappointment. Instead of waiting for him to come back and explain, take a step back and look at what he's showing you. A partner who hides from conflict today will likely avoid it again tomorrow. Relationships require two people who can meet each other in the hard moments, not just the fun or easy ones. If he runs now, what will happen when bigger challenges arise later? His silence isn't just a gap in communication. It's a window into what life with him might always look like: uncertain, one-sided, and emotionally distant. You deserve someone who is not only present, but emotionally brave. Someone who chooses to talk even when it's difficult. While his silence may sting right now, it's actually giving you something valuable. The chance to walk away and make space for someone better. Let him go without chasing answers. Sometimes the gift is not in who someone is, but in seeing clearly who they're not. His absence leaves room for a love that chooses you openly, consistently, and without hesitation.